I hate the Leobog Hi75. This is just not a keyboard that delivers what I am looking for out of a mechanical keyboard. The awesome thing about that though is mechanical keyboards are all about preference and modifying them for your preference. So in this video, we are going to talk about my journey with the Leobog Hi75, the reasons I dislike this keyboard, what I try to do to fix that, and whether or not I'm going to continue using this. If you're new to desktop tech, I make videos on this channel about the tech that lives on my desk, peripherals, and home tech products in general. And if you hit the subscribe button, we're halfway or a little more than halfway to 500 subs, and that would really be appreciated. Now, in full disclaimer, I got this keyboard for free from Banggood in exchange for a review video. That video is been posted a while ago, so they have no influence over this. I am someone that has very little to no feeling in these two fingers and this part of my hand unless I need a tactile switch to let me know that a key has been actuated. The Leobog Hi75 comes from the factory with the Leobog Greywood linear switches that are really, really light. On top of that, it's got a very, very flexible gasket mount, and it's got a die cut PCB so that the PCB actually has some flex when you're typing on it. The combination of those things has just led me to feeling a really, really mushy, inconsistent key press across the entire keyboard. I find that the combination of a gasket mount along with a die cut PCB and linear switches, that's kind of like the holy trifecta to not giving me enough feedback to register that a key has been pressed when I'm using any kind of mechanical keyboard. It was a very similar problem that I had with the Ayula F75, but that also has Leobog switches as well. The great thing about this though is that we can modify and we can change the switches out, but I also wanted to see what could be done about kind of some of that mushy, inconsistent gasket feedback. So I decided to take this keyboard apart. Now, taking this keyboard apart is actually pretty easy. You can actually see some of the screws that hold the case together under a couple of the keys, and it's a 10 or 15 minute job to take those keys and switches out and then remove the top plate where you can go ahead and get kind of access to everything in the keyboard. Once you have the keyboard open though, you have to be extremely careful because you are going to have a ribbon connector that uses a kind of like a jam style connector where you slip the ribbon cable in and then you have another kind of plastic wedge that goes and then puts pressure on that cable. I was really, really careful when taking this apart, and when I went to slide that top wedge out, the clips that hold that wedge in place got broken. It's a captive wedge, and I broke the part that keeps it captive, if that makes any sense. But taking this keyboard apart, we have a very, very thin, very, very flexible top plate, and that top plate is going to offer you quite a bit of flex along with that gasket mount at the top of the keyboard. The gasket material at the top of the keyboard is like a pour-on foam that squishes as you depress the keys. Now, talking about the die cut PCB and the flex cut PCB and the foam underneath that. Looking at this keyboard, when I went to take it apart, if I were to remove that foam that we have on the bottom of the case, I would get a ton more gasket performance and a lot more top plate flex. But what I am looking for is kind of a more equal, slightly firmer response from the top plate. I want all of the keys to kind of have a similar amount of flex and travel when I'm typing on them so that I know that a key actuation is going to happen kind of at the same amount of pressure that I'm giving, especially on these fingers as I'm typing along. So for me to remove the foam out of this case would have been kind of just a non-starter. I could have added more foam to this case to maybe try and equal out some of the flex. The only problem is that as it is, the foam that the PCB is resting on top of is already providing the squish. So I wasn't gonna add more foam necessarily. That might make it a little bit too firm for my liking, and I wasn't gonna go foamless because then that would be kind of way too squishy for my liking. So I decided to not really do anything with the foam. I did add a tape mod to the place where the two parts of the keyboard case meet. We call this a force break mod. I don't have much in the way of case ping on this, but the force break mod is gonna help regardless. It helps kind of dampen vibrations. I also considered doing a tape mod for this. I just don't think I'm gonna end up holding on to this keyboard much longer, so I didn't really want to do a tape mod. What I did do though was I did change out the switches on this keyboard to my Otemu Golds. Those are some clicky, very clackety switches. And even with these new switches, I found that the overall sound from this keyboard to not really be something that I like that much. I think some of that has to do with the keycaps. The keycaps seem to be really, really cheap and kind of hollow. So my options would be to either A, replace these keycaps with a different keycap option, which I'm not sure how hot I am on investing in a keyboard that doesn't allow me to reprogram any of the function keys to better suit my needs on a Mac computer, or I could just get rid of this keyboard, which is what I think I'm gonna do with this. Using this keyboard with my Otemu Gold clicky switches, I definitely feel like some of the vagueness of typing has been reduced with the firmer key press, but I'm still not a fan of the way the flex cut PCB feels. I just don't think in general I am a flex cut PCB person. And I think the combination of the flex cut PCB along with the kind of cheapness or the kind of quality of the keycaps has kind of led this keyboard to giving you a very high-pitched, very kind of pingy sound, even though it's an aluminum keyboard, which I would just assume to be a little bit kind of deeper sounding, especially with all the foam that's in this keyboard, because this keyboard's got like 5 layers of foam. And so I was really surprised at kind of how high-pitched the sound, even with the stock switches that should have kind of like a deeper, thockier sound, it still sounds pretty high-pitched and thocky, or high-pitched and kind of poppy, I guess would be the only way to describe it. Overall though, I just think that if you're gonna get the Leobog Hi75 and you're someone that has some kind of like preference on stuff, just be aware that the flex cut PCB along with the gasket mount is kind of gonna give you a bit of squish, but inconsistent squish, or not the most consistent amount of feedback. So if you're someone that's buying this primarily for typing and you want that kind of feedback as you're pressing keys, this might not be the preference that's there for you. On the other hand, if you're someone that's looking for a gaming keyboard, something that's gonna be kind of squishy when you're kind of hammering keys for Valorant or what other popular game there is with Gen Z, or I guess millennials, I'm kind of an old boomer now, as the millennials would say, then this keyboard might totally be something that fits your preference. Just be aware that other than the F keys not being reprogrammable, the Leobog software isn't that fully featured, and it is only compatible with a Windows computer. So if you are someone like me that's after kind of feedback when you're typing, the Leobog Hi75 might not be the keyboard for you. If you're someone that is curious about the Leobog Hi75, or you want a keyboard that is very similar to this, but maybe a little bit higher quality, I did a review video comparing this to the GammaK TK75 Pro, which is anywhere between like $10 to $12 more expensive, but it comes with some KTT Hyacinth pre-lubed switches, and there's no flex cuts on the PCB. And even with those linear switches, I found that typing experience to be really, really pleasant and really, really easy for me to get in a groove. Maybe because the gasket performance is different, I don't know, but I also found the sound to be quite a bit better. And I'll have a link to where you can see that comparison right up here. And until next time, guys, it's been Mitchell, Desktop Tech.